Over the past few months, I've given you a few synthesizer sound design challenges. And today is another one of those. Today I want you to answer the following question. Would you know how to turn a short, plucky sound into a droning wall of noise? If the answer is yes, maybe you can skip this video. But if the answer gives you at least a few seconds pause, let's look at least 2 ways together to do that. And let's talk for 1 second first before we do it about why you might want to do that. For example, if you take a simple, plucky little sound like this, it's kind of light, it communicates lightness, dynamic, upward energy, a kind of an uplifting delicacy, right? But if you watch the video on minimalism, you'll remember that I introduced the drone as quite a heavy, almost spiritual musical element. And I think that's actually correct. I think the drone has a lot of emotional weight that is actually, it feels so simple. It feels like one note. It feels like a stable thing. But its presence in music is very significant in that it imparts so much energy and color to a composition, but at the same time doesn't necessarily rhythmically draw away from the percussion that's happening. So you can have this wall of sound that builds up over time, and then as it becomes overwhelming, it subsides and reinvigorates you with new energy in the percussion section of the music. A drone can also function as a perfect accompaniment for a plucked element like this. So what we're going to do now is we're going to duplicate this plucked element and we're going to create a drone alternate layer for it so that it has something to breathe off of. And it's working in the context of this sort of housey groove. So this composition is very much about the groove. We don't want to make something that pulls too far away from the groove, but a drone can be the perfect thing because the drone then might pull this energy into this like static, ominous direction, and then you can snap back into the groove, if that makes sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this synthesizer. I've called it Sweet with 7 E's, I think. And I'm just going to duplicate it. Okay, so that we can mess with this secondary version as much as we like. And so what this Sweet is a bunch of MIDI notes that I have generated through a very mysterious and enigmatic process that I won't explain to you right now in this video because that's not what it's about. It's going into a synthesizer called the Repro 5, which is by Yuhi, and it's a clone of basically the Prophet synthesizers, right? It's got a bunch of different voices. We're just going to have our simple little pluck playing here, right? And so what we want is, first of all, we want the filter to just be open with not too much envelope on the filter. And so now this amplifier is really the envelope that we're going to hear. So attack, decay, sustain, and release, right? And so to turn a pluck into a drone, it could be as simple as raising the sustain and increasing the release. We just have to make sure that all of our oscillators were playing in tune. So we get this kind of wall of sound. It gets a bit too loud, so feel free to turn it way down. And in the context of the mix, it sounds like this. You could push it back down. And this is kind of a drone. Of course, there are some movements of notes within it, but it's a very stable element that you could record and fade in over time. For example, you could do it like this. You could make an audio track, take the second Sweet, and then just hit record. And you've got this sausage of a sound. Look at that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to record it all the way to the end here and have it come in gradually. Once it's a sample, I can fade it in gradually. Awesome. I'll let it play a little longer just to give it material. Let's mute this layer. And so now we've got that as audio, right? The resampled, that's what that's called. The resampled drone. And maybe I just want it to be something like this and then chop it off there. So then you'd get something like, we just have the nice plucks. And so everything gets really full, fullness, 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 and emptiness. It's one of the 10 rules of techno, I believe, isn't it? There you go. That was a bit of an abrupt ending, so maybe you could add again some delay to it or something, or figure out a way to make this transition a little bit less abrupt. But that was one way to turn a pluck into a drone, and now I want to show you the other way. So if the first way was you learn your synthesizer properly and you work with the ADSR envelopes to make your plucky sounds endless and long, then the other way is, especially if you don't have access to the ADSR, for example in a sampler or something, then maybe what you might want to do instead is use a reverb for it. And so let me take another duplicate of our plucks. Cool, simple plucks. We add a reverb, and now this reverb is called a hybrid reverb, right, in Ableton. And so you have to choose either you want the convolution reverb by setting the blend to the left, or the algorithmic one by sending it to the right. And so it's the right one that we want, the algorithmic reverb, because that has this freeze function. And the freeze function is, let's set it to 100% wet. Oh, maybe we don't want quartz as an algorithm. Maybe we want dark hall. There we go. So once we've frozen it, it becomes this endless drone, perfectly usable like this, but maybe we want to keep adding the notes in that are coming in so we get all the harmonics. It's just a big buildup of frequencies now. And so we might want to resample that into a drone, and that drone is now going to match our lead synth pretty well because it's got all the harmonics from it in there. As you can imagine, this is a lot more edgy than the other version was, because there's just a lot more like irregularities going on, I would say. Like it's the modifiers that make it less perfect. Yeah, that's cool. So let's mute this now and imagine this as a layer that we do as a sort of a build up towards a transition. Probably want it a lot quieter in the mix. Yeah, cool. It can also work the other way around, right? Where you use it almost as a crash. So you could go. Just a burst of energy that's related to your original sound. I also think this sound is a bit dark, so we might want to just EQ it up a little bit, like this. So it doesn't become such a foreground element. This is a way of generating audio textures and audio material that you can then use to sculpt and to build your own construction with, right? But you start from a pretty simple musical idea, which has some harmonics in it, and then you build all of these walls of sound using the same harmonics, and then they'll all fit together quite nicely. Remember a few weeks ago I did a video on delta sounds? Actually, I think this could make for a nice delta sound. Let's do this, and this, and this, and this, and see what these sound like, also with a bit of reverb on there. Isn't that good? Isn't that good? First try. That is good. They sound related, right? Because in some ways they are. Gorgeous. If you don't know what a delta sound is, go watch that video. Now let's consider this a transition that we put in our composition. Ha! Beautiful. It comes and it goes. And it propels us into the next musical section. There you go. That was a beautiful application of drones. Two different ways of making a drone. One by manipulating the envelopes of your synthesizer, and the other one by using frozen reverb. And in both cases, you might just want to resample it so you have a sausage of an audio file that you can then shape and place in your music however you need, especially when it comes to transitions. I still think the original Pluck needs a little bit of work before I finalize this track, but I think I've explained the theoretical concept for today pretty well. So leave me a comment below to say something nice to me, like the video and subscribe. If you like the way I teach, maybe go follow one of my courses. And until next time, stay producing, be good to each other, and take care.